What would you do if the man you loved most became the reason you had to disappear? 6 months pregnant. Nora Blackwell walked into Chicago's most private restaurant expecting dinner with her husband Roman Blackwell, the Mafia king everyone feared. Instead, she found him in a candle-lit booth with another woman. His lips brushing her hand like vows meant nothing. Nora didn't scream. She didn't beg. She went home, placed her wedding ring on a letter, and vanished before midnight. But this isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about power, motherhood, family secrets, and the kind of love that must either change or destroy everything it touches. Stay until the end, because the letter Roman finds will break him. Like this video and comment where you're watching from. The letter was still open on Roman Blackwell's desk when the city below him kept moving like nothing sacred had just been broken. Chicago glittered beneath the penthouse windows, all steel snow sirens and gold lights scattered across the river. From that height, the city looked obedient. Streets lined up in clean grids. Cars moved like blood through veins. Towers stood with their shoulders squared against the winter sky. Roman had always liked that view. It made the world seem manageable. That night, for the first time in his life, it made him feel small. He stood barefoot on the dark hardwood floor, still wearing the suit he had worn to the Verity room. His tie hung loose around his neck. Nora's letter trembled slightly in his hand, though he would have sworn his hands never shook. Men had watched those hands sign orders that moved millions. Men had watched those hands lift a glass before someone else disappeared from the city by morning. But one page of his wife's handwriting had done what Bullitt's rivals and federal agents had failed to do. It had stopped him cold. His mother's voice came through the phone again, smooth as polished marble. "Roman, answer me." He looked at Nora's ring on the desk. Small, simple, gold. He had offered her diamonds the size of sins when he proposed, and she had laughed at him. "I'm not wearing a chandelier on my hand," she had said. So he bought her the plain gold band she wanted. At the time, he had thought it was charming. One more sign that Nora Whitaker was nothing like the women who circled his world with red mouths and careful eyes. Now the ring sat beside the letter, like a quiet verdict. "What did you do?" Roman asked again. On the other end, Evelyn Blackwell did not sigh. She was not the kind of woman who wasted breath on guilt. "I reminded your wife where she stands." Roman's fingers tightened around the phone. "My wife is gone." Then perhaps she understood. For a moment, Roman could hear nothing but the wind shoving itself against the glass. It sounded almost human, like something trying to get inside. He ended the call without another word. Evelyn called back once, twice. He let it ring. Then he sat in Nora's chair and read the letter again from the beginning. 3 years earlier, Nora Whitaker had not known enough to be afraid of him. That was the first thing Roman noticed. Most people knew his name before they knew his face. Blackwell was not just a family name in Chicago. It was a warning stitched into old neighborhoods, courthouse hallways, union offices, private clubs, back rooms, and waterfront warehouses where cameras always seemed to fail at the wrong time. His grandfather had built the first pieces of the empire during Prohibition, when whiskey moved through the city under tarps, and men learned that loyalty could be bought, but fear lasted longer. His father, Thomas Blackwell, had made the family respectable enough to sit beside mayors and ruthless enough to bury enemies beneath that respectability. Roman inherited both sides, the charity galas and the collections, the trucking companies and the locked rooms, the handshakes in public and the whispered debts in private. By 34, Roman Blackwell had become the man nobody wanted to owe and nobody could afford to insult. Then he walked into a school library on the south side and met a woman who told him to sit on the carpet. The charity event had been Evelyn's idea. She believed public kindness was useful when federal interest grew too warm. Cameras loved children. Donors loved photographs. Judges loved plaques with their names engraved in brass. Roman arrived late because a man named Vincent Pell had decided that morning not to pay what he owed. By lunch, Vincent had changed his mind. By 3, Roman was in the back of a black car, wiping blood from one cuff with a white handkerchief while his driver told him the school principal had called twice. He expected gratitude when he arrived. Maybe fear. Probably both. Instead, he found Nora standing in the library with a stack of picture books pressed to her chest. She was wearing a soft blue sweater, black pants, and no jewelry except a small silver cross at her throat. Her brown hair was pinned badly with loose strands falling around her face. There was marker ink on the side of her hand. A little girl tugged on her sleeve asking for help spelling the word butterfly. Roman stepped inside and the room noticed him the way rooms always did. Voices dropped. Adults straightened. Children looked up without understanding why the air had changed. The principal hurried toward him, smiling too hard. Before she could speak, Nora looked him over and said, "You're late." The principal's face drained of color. Roman studied Nora. People had insulted him before, but never with that much honest disappointment. "I had business," he said. Nora handed the stack of books to him. "So do we. The kids have 20 minutes left before dismissal. If you're here for the photo stand near the banner. If you're here to help sit with the second graders. They're reading about sea turtles." The room went silent. Roman could have ignored her. He could have smiled, posed, written the check, and left before anyone remembered how to breathe. Instead, something in him loosened. Not much. Just enough. He took off his jacket, folded it over a chair, and sat cross-legged on the rug while 15 children stared at him like he had landed from another planet. Nora handed him a book. "Try not to sound like you're reading a hostage statement," she said quietly. Roman looked up at her. She did not flinch. That was how it began. Not with candlelight, not with violins, not with some grand romantic confession. With a woman who did not care that he was feared, because to her a room full of children mattered more than a room full of men with guns. After that day, Roman found reasons to return. The library needed new shelves. He paid for them. The playground needed repairs. He sent a crew. The school needed winter coats. Boxes arrived before the first snow. Nora thanked the foundation, not him. That irritated him more than it should have. One afternoon, he found her in the hallway carrying a crate of donated books. "You could let someone help you," he said. "I could," she answered, shifting the crate against her hip. "But most people who say that are really asking to be admired for offering." Roman took the crate from her anyway. She let him. They walked to the library together, their steps echoing down the empty hall. "You always talk to donors like this?" he asked. "Only the ones who look like they need it. And what do I look like I need?" Nora pushed open the library door with her shoulder. "A person who tells you no and lives." Roman laughed, then a real laugh, low and surprised. He had not laughed like that in years. Their first date was not supposed to be a date. Nora agreed to coffee because Roman claimed he wanted to discuss a reading scholarship. She chose a crowded cafe in Lincoln Park, arrived 10 minutes early, and paid for her own tea before he got there. Roman slid into the chair across from her in a charcoal coat that cost more than the cafe's espresso machine. "You don't trust me," he said. Nora stirred honey into her cup. "I don't know you. Most people think they do. Most people are lazy." He smiled. She did not. That made him smile more. He told her only careful pieces of himself at first. That his father had been hard. That his mother was harder. That his family had money in transportation, construction, security, restaurants, and other things he did not define. That he had been raised to keep his face blank and his back straight. That love in his house had always sounded like instruction. Nora listened without trying to fix him. That was new too. When he asked about her life, she told him the truth in plain language. Her mother had died when Nora was 16. Her father, Daniel Whitaker, had never fully recovered from the grief or the stroke that came years later. Nora had worked through college, earned her teaching degree, and helped her younger sister, Mara, whenever she could. She had built a life out of small paychecks, long days, and the stubborn belief that ordinary goodness still mattered. Roman did not understand ordinary goodness. He wanted to. On their third date, he took her walking along the lake after dinner. The wind was vicious, and Nora kept laughing because her scarf would not stay in place. Roman reached to fix it, and she went still for half a heartbeat. He noticed. He noticed everything. "I would never hurt you," he said. Nora looked at him, eyes dark under the streetlights. "Men say that like hurt only means hands." Roman had no answer, so he gave her the closest thing to honesty he owned. "My life isn't clean, Nora." She looked out over the black water. "Neither is anyone's. Some people just hide the dirt under better rugs." He should have walked away from her then. He knew that. Even then, some disciplined part of him understood that Nora Whitaker did not belong anywhere near the Blackwell name. She was too warm for it, too direct, too unwilling to mistake wealth for safety. Instead, he kissed her beside the lake while the wind cut through both of them. And for a brief, dangerous season, Roman let himself believe wanting something beautiful did not mean he would ruin it. Evelyn Blackwell met Nora at dinner 2 months later. The Blackwell estate sat in Lake Forest behind iron gates and old trees heavy with snow. The house looked less like a home than a sentence passed down through generations. White stone, tall windows, black shutters, a circular drive where expensive cars came and went like sharks. Nora wore a green dress Roman had bought her, though she had argued about the price for 20 minutes. "I feel like I'm wearing someone's mortgage," she whispered as they walked inside. Roman placed his hand at the small of her back. "You look beautiful. That wasn't my concern." "I know." Inside, Evelyn waited beneath a portrait of Roman's grandfather. She was silver-haired, elegant, and still as a knife on a white tablecloth. She kissed Roman on both cheeks. Then she turned to Nora. "So," Evelyn said, "you're the teacher." Nora smiled politely. "And you're Roman's mother." Evelyn's mouth curved. "For now, we both have accurate information." Dinner was served in a room long enough to make conversation feel like a formal exercise. Evelyn asked questions that sounded harmless until they landed. Where did Nora's family summer? They did not. What clubs did her father belong to? None. Had Nora considered leaving teaching now that Roman could provide no? Did Nora understand the obligations that came with loving a man like Roman? Nora set down her wine glass. "I'm learning Roman. I'm not marrying an obligation." Evelyn looked at Roman. Roman said nothing. It was the first time Nora felt that silence as a wall. Later that night, while Roman took a call in the library, Evelyn found Nora near the staircase. The house was quiet around them. Staff moved somewhere out of sight, trained to become invisible. Evelyn stood beside Nora and looked toward the family portraits lining the hall. "Do you know what happens to women who marry into families like ours?" Nora kept her voice steady. "They become family." Evelyn smiled without warmth. "No, dear. They become useful, or they become problems." Nora should have left then. Sometimes years later she would think about that sentence and wonder whether her body had understood the danger before her heart did. Because she remembered the way the house seemed colder after Evelyn spoke. She remembered the way Roman returned, touched her elbow, and asked if she was ready to go. She remembered looking at him and choosing not to tell him what his mother had said. That was the first small surrender. There would be others. Roman proposed after 8 months. Not in a restaurant, not in public. He knew Nora would hate that. He took her to the empty school library after hours where the new shelves he had paid for lined the walls and children's drawings hung from string near the windows. Snow tapped softly against the glass. Nora found him standing between the picture books and the reading rug holding a small box. She stared at it. "Roman." "I know," he said. You hate spectacle. I also hate being ambushed near alphabet charts. His smile was nervous. Roman Blackwell nervous. She almost loved him more for that alone. I am not a good man, he said. Nora's face softened. I know. I have done things you would not forgive if you knew the shape of them. Then why are you asking me? Because when I am with you, I remember there was a version of me before all this. Or maybe I imagine one. I don't know. But I want to be closer to him. Nora looked at him for a long time. That is not the same as changing. No, Roman said. But it is the first honest thing I have. The ring was simple because Nora had already warned him. Plain gold, no diamonds, no performance. She said yes, with tears in her eyes and fear in her chest. Both were real. They married quietly in a chapel outside the city. Mara stood beside Nora. Evelyn sat in the front row wearing silver silk and an expression suitable for a tax audit. Roman held Nora's hand so carefully during the vows that she almost forgot the shadows waiting beyond the chapel doors. Almost. Marriage to Roman Blackwell was beautiful in the beginning. He sent her coffee at work when she forgot breakfast. He learned that she liked Thunderstorm's old bookstores and sleeping with one foot outside the blanket. He watched her grade papers at the kitchen island and pretended not to be fascinated by the tiny stars she drew beside good answers. He touched her like reverence was something his body knew even if his world did not. For a while, Nora believed love could make a dangerous man gentle. But love did not change the phone calls that came after midnight. It did not change the way Roman's men stopped talking when she entered a room. It did not change the locked study in the penthouse, or the second phone in his coat pocket, or the faint bruise across his knuckles at breakfast. When she asked, he kissed her forehead and said, "It's handled." Those two words became the shape of their marriage. Where were you? It's handled. Why is there blood on your cuff? It's handled. Why did your mother schedule a dinner for me with women who look at me like I stole something? It's handled. Why do I feel alone in a house full of guards? Nora never asked that one aloud. By the second year, Evelyn had begun treating Nora less like an intruder and more like an inconvenience that refused to expire. She corrected Nora's clothes, her posture, her guest lists, her charity choices, her refusal to use Blackwell money to impress other women with Blackwell money. At a fundraiser for a children's hospital, Evelyn leaned close and murmured, "You smile too openly. It invites familiarity." Nora kept her eyes on the auction stage. I thought that was the point of smiling. The point of smiling is control. Nora looked at her then. That explains yours. Evelyn did not forgive that. Roman heard about it before the night was over. In the car home, he rubbed his forehead and said, "You don't have to provoke her." Nora turned from the window. "She insulted me. She tests everyone." "I'm not everyone. I'm your wife." Roman looked tired. He was always tired by then. Tired in a way money could not soften. I know. But he said it like knowing was enough. It was not. When Nora became pregnant, she hoped something would shift. Not all at once. She was not naive enough for that. But slowly, maybe. The baby made the future feel less like an idea and more like a person knocking from the inside of her body. Roman cried when she showed him the test. He tried to hide it, but Nora saw. He knelt in front of her, pressed his forehead to her stomach, though there was nothing to feel yet, and whispered, "I'll keep you both safe." For one whole week he came home early. He assembled half the crib himself, cursed at the instructions, and laughed when Nora took the screwdriver from his hand. He attended one doctor's appointment and stared at the ultrasound screen like he was seeing a miracle he did not deserve. Then a shipment went missing near Gary. A union boss changed sides. A federal subpoena landed on Evelyn's desk. The Blackwell world tightened around Roman again, and he let it. The crib remained unfinished in the nursery one-side rail leaning against the wall. A tiny yellow blanket Nora had bought lay folded across the mattress. Sometimes she stood in the doorway with one hand on her growing belly and imagined a different life. A small house, a backyard, Roman coming home before dinner because no one feared him enough to need him after dark. Then she would hear his voice behind the study door, cold and low, and the dream would fold itself away. The Callaway Alliance entered their lives in December. Evelyn introduced it over dinner at the Lake Forest estate as if she were discussing weather. Lionel Callaway controls more than shipping, she said, cutting into her salmon. Ports, customs brokers, freight insurance, political friendships. His daughter Jade is the public face of the family. Beautiful, educated, well-connected. Nora did not look up from her plate. Roman did. I know who Jade is. Evelyn's gaze flicked to him. Then you know why the alliance matters? It can be handled through contracts. Contracts do not smile for cameras. Women do. The room went still. Nora placed her fork down carefully. Roman said, "Mother." Evelyn continued as if he had not spoken. Jade understands our world. She was raised in it. She knows when to speak, when to be silent, and how to stand beside power without mistaking herself for its source. Nora felt the baby move under her ribs. She looked at Evelyn. That sounds exhausting. Evelyn's eyes cooled. It sounds necessary. Roman reached for his glass. Nora watched him, waited for him to say something sharper, something final. He did not. On the drive home, the city lights smeared across the windows. Nora said, "She wants Jade near you." Roman kept his eyes on the road. "She wants the Callaways near the business." "That's not what I said." "I know what you said. Then answer me." His hands tightened on the steering wheel. "There is nothing between me and Jade. Is that supposed to comfort me? It's the truth." "No, Roman. The truth would be telling your mother to stop treating your marriage like a board seat." His jaw flexed. "You think I don't know what she's doing? I think knowing has never stopped you from obeying her." That one struck deep. Nora saw it in the way his face closed. He said nothing for the rest of the ride. In the weeks that followed, Roman became harder to reach. Meetings ran late. Calls came through dinner. Evelyn visited the penthouse when Nora was not home and left traces of herself everywhere. A vase moved, a file missing from Roman's desk, a note written in that elegant slanted hand. Jade's name began appearing in conversations like perfume that would not leave a room, a Callaway reception, a shipping conference, a private dinner with investors, a strategy meeting. Nora asked Roman once while folding tiny onesies in the nursery, "Have you seen her alone?" He leaned against the doorframe, tie-loosened exhaustion under his eyes. "No." She looked at him. "Do not lie to me." His expression darkened not with guilt but with offense. "I said no." Nora nodded and returned to folding. That was another surrender, smaller than the first, more dangerous, because she had begun measuring truth not by what Roman said, but by how much of herself she had to silence to believe him. The invitation to the Verity room came on a Thursday morning. Roman stood in the bedroom fastening his watch. Nora sat on the edge of the bed, rubbing lotion into her stomach. She had barely slept. The baby had kicked all night, and Roman had come home at 2 a.m, smelling of cigar smoke and winter air. "Dinner tonight," he said. Nora looked up. "With who?" "With me." She searched his face. "Just us." His eyes met hers in the mirror. "Just us." Something in her chest loosened. She hated herself for how quickly hope returned. It was humiliating the way love could survive on crumbs and call them meals. What time? 8. The Verity room. That place with the impossible reservation list. Roman smiled faintly. "I know a guy. You are the guy. For some things." For a moment he looked like the man from the school library. The man who sat on the carpet and read about sea turtles because a woman with marker on her hand told him to. Nora stood and crossed the room. Roman placed his palm over her belly. The baby kicked. His face changed. It always did when he felt their daughter move. The hardness left him so quickly it almost hurt to see. "Strong girl," he murmured. Nora covered his hand with hers. "She misses you." Roman closed his eyes. "I know." "Do you?" He opened them. The moment thinned. His phone buzzed on the dresser. Neither of them moved. Then it buzzed again. Roman looked. "Mother." Nora stepped back first. "Answer it." Roman did not, but the air had already changed. By late afternoon, Evelyn had made her move. She called Roman to the estate under the pretense of an urgent business matter. Lionel Calloway had concerns. Jade would be present. The alliance needed warmth, not signatures. Roman resisted for 7 minutes. Evelyn let him exhaust himself. Then she said, "You can play husband after you protect the family." Roman arrived at the Verity room early. Jade was already there, seated in the corner booth beneath the amber light. She wore black and smiled like she had been trained in mirrors. "Your mother said you might be difficult," Jade said. Roman sat across from her. "My mother says many things, most of them useful. Not tonight." Jade tilted her head. "She also said your wife would be joining later." Roman's eyes sharpened. "What?" Jade lifted her glass. "Perhaps I misunderstood." Roman reached for his phone, but before he could call Nora, Grant Holloway slid into the booth beside Jade with contracts, excuses, and urgent language. Then Lionel Calloway arrived. Then 2 men from the Port Authority. Then a judge Roman disliked but needed. The dinner became a trap made of obligations. By the time the others left, Jade remained. Roman stood. "This meeting is over." Jade touched his sleeve. "Roman, wait." He looked down at her hand. Across the room, the host was leading Nora through the dining room. Jade saw her first and smiled. Roman followed her gaze a second too late. Nora stood between tables, one hand on her belly, her face pale but steady. The candlelight caught the emerald earrings Roman had given her the previous Christmas. Her eyes moved from Jade's hand to Roman's face. For one terrible second, no one breathed. Roman stepped out of the booth. "Nora." She did not answer. Jade lowered her hand slowly, almost gracefully. Nora looked at Roman as if seeing not one betrayal, but every silence that had led her there. Then she turned and walked away. Roman moved to follow, but Jade said his name. Not loudly. Just enough to delay him. Just enough for Nora to reach the door. Just enough for the cold Chicago night to swallow her whole. The cold outside the Verity room did not make Nora cry. It should have. It cut through her coat and slipped beneath the collar of her dress, sharp enough to steal her breath. Snow moved sideways across the sidewalk. The city lights blurred in the wind. Behind her, inside the restaurant, Roman Blackwell was probably already standing, probably already saying her name in that low voice that had once made her feel chosen. Nora kept walking. The driver straightened when he saw her. "Mrs. Blackwell." She opened the back door herself. "The penthouse," she said. "Should I wait for Mr. Blackwell?" Nora looked through the restaurant windows. For a second, she saw only candlelight and shadows. Then she saw Roman's shape moving through the dining room. No. The word was quiet, but it closed something inside her. The car pulled away from the curb before Roman reached the doors. Nora sat in the back seat with one hand over her belly and the other pressed against her mouth. She was afraid if she moved it, the sound inside her would escape. Not a sob. Not yet. Something worse. Something old and tired and breaking after years of being held in place. The baby kicked once. Nora closed her eyes. "I know," she whispered. "I know, sweetheart." Chicago slid past in pieces. Wet pavement. Red lights. Men in dark coats leaning into the weather. A woman laughing under an awning with her face turned toward someone who loved her enough to stand in the cold. That was what hurt. Not Jade's hand under Roman's mouth, not the smile on that woman's face. It was the small, stupid memory of Roman touching Nora's stomach that morning and calling their daughter strong. It was the fact that Nora had believed for one fragile hour that he was coming back to her. The penthouse doors opened to silence. No music, no warmth, just glass steel and the smell of Roman's cologne lingering in rooms too expensive to feel lived in. Nora stood in the entryway and looked around as if she were visiting a museum built around her own mistakes. The framed black and white photograph over the console had been Evelyn's choice. The sculptures by the windows had been Evelyn's choice. Even the dining table long enough to seat 12 people who never laughed together had been Evelyn's choice. Nora wondered how much of her own marriage had been furnished by another woman's hands. She went to the bedroom. The closet light came on automatically when she opened the doors. Roman's suits lined one side dark and perfect. Her dresses hung on the other arranged by color because Evelyn had once said disorder was a confession of weakness. Nora took down a small suitcase from the top shelf. At first, her movements were careful. Sweater, jeans, prenatal vitamins, the ultrasound photo from the nightstand, her mother's rosary from the drawer, cash from behind the loose bathroom tile. Then she stopped in front of the mirror. A pregnant woman stared back at her in a burgundy dress and winter-pale skin. Her hair had come loose. Her lipstick was still perfect. Her eyes looked unfamiliar. She touched her reflection fingers resting over her own mouth. "You are not going to beg," she said. Her voice sounded strange in the quiet room. "You are not going to explain pain to people who profit from it." The front door opened. Nora Roman's voice traveled through the penthouse with the force of command. It had opened locked doors in this city. It had ended arguments before they began. It had brought armed men to attention. Nora kept folding clothes. His footsteps came fast down the hall. He appeared in the bedroom doorway, snow still melting on the shoulders of his coat. His dark hair was windblown. His eyes found the suitcase first, then her face. "What are you doing?" "Leaving." The word landed between them like glass breaking. Roman stepped into the room. "Because of what you saw," Nora looked at him. "Because of what I finally stopped pretending not to see." His jaw tightened. "It was a business dinner." She laughed once. It sounded nothing like laughter. "You kissed her hand. She touched mine first, and you were powerless to move away." His face changed. A flicker. Guilt, anger, pride. They moved too quickly for her to name. "Nora, you do not understand what this is. There it is. What that sentence? Your favorite door. You hide behind it every time you do not want to tell me the truth." Roman removed his coat slowly as if controlling his body might control the room. "Jade Calloway is part of a business arrangement. My mother set the meeting. It was not personal." Nora zipped the suitcase. "It was personal to me. You are upset. I am your wife. I know that." "No," she said, turning fully toward him. "You know how to say that. You know how to introduce me. You know how to put your hand on my back at parties so everyone remembers who I belong to. But you do not know what it means." Roman's eyes darkened. "You belong to me. Do not twist my words. I am trying to talk to you. You are trying to manage me." He took a step closer. "Nora, stop." She lifted the suitcase from the bed. It was heavier than she expected. She did not let him see it. Roman moved into her path. "Move." "No." The room went still. For the first time since she had known him, Nora saw the full shape of the man other people feared. Not because he raised his hand. He did not. Not because he shouted. He rarely needed to. It was in the way his body filled the doorway, the way the air seemed to wait for him to decide what reality would be. "You are 6 months pregnant," he said. "You are angry. You are hurt. I understand that. But you are not walking out in the middle of the night." Nora looked at him, and the fear came. Not because she thought he would hurt her, because a part of her still wanted him to stop her in a way that meant love. Because a weaker part of her wanted to believe being claimed was the same as being kept safe. Then the baby moved again. Nora's hand went to her stomach. Roman's eyes followed the motion, and something in him softened. She used that moment to step around him. He caught her wrist. Not hard. "Enough." Nora looked down at his hand. "Let go." "Nora, let go of me, Roman." He did. She walked past him. At the door, she stopped long enough to place her wedding ring on his desk. The letter lay beneath it, written in a hand that had not shaken until the final line. Roman watched from the hallway, silent now. Nora did not turn around. If you wanted a wife who could be replaced, you should not have married one who remembered how to leave. Then she was gone. The train to Milwaukee left after midnight. Nora bought the ticket with cash and kept her head down beneath the hood of her coat. Her phone buzzed inside her purse until she turned it off. Every vibration felt like Roman's hand at her wrist. The train was half empty. A student slept with headphones on. An old man read a paperback under the dim light. A mother across the aisle tried to keep a toddler from crying by feeding him crackers one at a time. Nora watched them and felt the first tear slide down her cheek. She wiped it away quickly, then another came. By the time the train pulled out of Chicago, Nora was crying silently into her sleeve. One hand curved around the child inside her, the other clutching the ultrasound photo like a passport to a country she had not yet reached. Mara Whitaker lived above a bakery in Milwaukee in a narrow apartment that always smelled faintly of sugar coffee and warm bread. When she opened the door, she was wearing sweatpants, wool socks, and an old college sweatshirt with a hole near the collar. Her face changed before Nora said a word. "What did he do?" Nora stood in the hallway with her suitcase beside her and snow melting in her hair. "Enough." Mara pulled her inside. There were people who asked questions because they wanted answers, and there were people who made room because they understood the answer would come when it could. Mara made tea. She found blankets. She took Nora's coat and hung it over a chair. She did all of it without looking too long at Nora's bare ring finger. Only when Nora sat on the couch and pressed both hands to her belly did Mara sit beside her. "Did he hurt you?" Nora shook her head. "Not with his hands." Mara's mouth tightened. "That counts." For a while, Nora could not speak. The apartment heater clicked. A truck passed below the window. Somewhere downstairs, bakery ovens rumbled to life for morning bread. Finally, Nora said, "I thought I was being strong." Mara waited. "But I was just being quiet." Her sister's face softened in a way that almost broke her. "Quiet kept you alive in that house," Mara said. "But it does not have to be your language forever." That was when Nora fell apart. Not beautifully. Not like women in movies who cry with shining eyes and perfect posture. She folded forward over her belly and sobbed until Mara wrapped both arms around her and held on. "I am so tired," Nora whispered. "I know. I am so lonely. I know. I do not know how to do this." Mara pressed her cheek against Nora's hair. "Then we do it ugly. We do it scared. We do it 1 hour at a time." For 2 days, Roman did not come. That should have comforted Nora. It did not. She told herself he was giving her space. Then she told herself he was too proud to chase. Then she told herself he was planning something because Roman Blackwell had never lost anything without first deciding whether it could be bought back, threatened back, or buried. On the third morning, flowers arrived. White lilies. Nora stared at them in the bakery doorway while the delivery boy shifted nervously from foot to foot. Mara came downstairs behind her. Absolutely not. The boy swallowed. I just deliver them, ma'am. Nora took the card. There were no words, only Roman's signature. She handed the flowers back. Take them to a hospital. The boy blinked. What? Someone there needs them more than I do. By noon, another arrangement arrived, roses this time. Then a velvet box containing a bracelet Nora had never wanted. Then an envelope with a handwritten note. Come home. We can fix this. Mara read it over Nora's shoulder and snorted. He thinks love is a delivery service. Nora folded the note once. No, he thinks guilt can be gift-wrapped. She put the note in a drawer and did not answer. That evening, Roman came himself. Nora heard the black SUV before she saw it. There was a certain sound expensive engines made against wet pavement. Smooth, predatory, out of place on Mara's narrow street. Mara looked through the curtain. He's here. Nora was in the kitchen slicing an apple she no longer wanted. Her hand froze around the knife. Mara turned. You do not have to see him. I know. But her voice did not sound like she knew anything. The knock came. 3 firm taps. Mara walked to the door and opened it only as far as the chain allowed. Roman stood in the hall in a dark overcoat, his face drawn from sleeplessness. He looked past Mara, searching the apartment. She does not want to see you, Mara said. I need to speak to my wife. Your wife needed to speak to you for 6 months. You were busy. Roman's eyes cut to her. Mara. No. You do not get to use my name like we are family while my sister is hiding in my kitchen trying not to shake. Nora closed her eyes. Roman's voice lowered. She is carrying my child. Mara did not move. Then maybe you should have remembered she was carrying your heart too. Silence. Nora gripped the counter. For a moment she thought Roman would force the door. Not with violence maybe, but with Roman's kind of pressure. A call to the landlord. A threat folded into politeness. A reminder that doors were only meaningful to people without power. Instead, he said, Nora, I know you can hear me. She did not answer. I know my mother was involved. Her eyes opened. Mara glanced back at her. Roman continued, voice rougher now. I know she arranged the meeting. I know Jade played along, but I did not ask for that. I did not want you hurt. Nora almost laughed. Intentions. Men like Roman loved intentions. They held them up like clean shirts over dirty hands. Mara said, Leave. Roman's face hardened. This is not between you and me. No, Mara said. It is between my sister and every person who made her feel small enough to vanish. The hallway stayed quiet for another breath. Then Roman stepped back. Tell her I will not stop trying. Mara shut the door. Nora put the knife down before her hand betrayed her. He sounded awful, Mara said softly. Nora stared at the apple slices on the cutting board. Good. But the word did not feel good. It felt like blood in her mouth. The next morning, Nora's phone rang from an unknown number. She was alone in the apartment while Mara worked downstairs. Snow tapped against the window. Nora almost ignored it. Then something cold moved through her, some instinct that had sharpened in the Blackwell house. She answered. Nora Blackwell, a woman's voice elegant and calm. How quickly you remember the name when you are hiding from it. Nora's hand tightened around the phone. Evelyn, we should talk. I have nothing to say to you. Then listen, I know what you saw at that restaurant. More importantly, I know why you saw it. Nora went still. Evelyn named an old hotel tea room downtown. Noon. Alone. Then the line went dead. Mara begged her not to go. Nora went anyway. The tea room sat inside a hotel old enough to pretend its ghosts were part of the charm. Brass railings, marble floors, velvet chairs, women in pearls murmuring over china cups as if the world had never raised its voice. Evelyn Blackwell sat near the window in a cream coat, silver hair pinned perfectly, black gloves folded beside her tea. She did not stand when Nora approached. "You look pale," Evelyn said. "I am pregnant and living out of a suitcase." A small smile. There she is. I wondered how much spine remained. Nora sat across from her. "Say what you called to say." Evelyn stirred her tea once, though she had added nothing to it. "Jade did exactly what I asked her to do." The room seemed to narrow. Nora heard the tiny clink of spoon against porcelain, a man laughing across the room, her own blood beating in her ears. "You set it up. Yes, you wanted me to see." "Of course." Nora's voice dropped. "Does Roman know Roman knows what I need him to know?" For the first time, Nora understood something that terrified her more than Roman's power ever had. Evelyn did not simply control the family. She believed she was the family. "My son is sentimental," Evelyn said. "He always has been. Your mistake was thinking sentiment could protect you." Nora's hand covered her stomach under the table. "My mistake was thinking your son was free." That landed. Evelyn's eyes sharpened. "Roman was born into responsibility. You were born into ordinary struggle and mistook it for moral superiority. I never wanted your money. No, you wanted something worse. You wanted his attention away from the empire." Nora leaned forward. "I wanted a husband. You married a Blackwell. That was never the role." Evelyn opened a slim folder and slid a document across the table. Nora did not touch it. "What is that? A clean exit? Divorce, a generous settlement, a confidentiality agreement, medical care through the birth. Afterward, we arrange custody in a way that preserves the child's proper place." Nora stared at her. "Proper place? The Blackwell name is not a decoration, Nora. It is protection. It is ownership. It is survival." "No." Evelyn's smile thinned. "You have not heard the terms. I heard enough." Nora stood. Evelyn remained seated, calm as winter. "You are a teacher with no savings, a sick father, a sister barely keeping herself afloat, and a child in your body who belongs to a family far more powerful than yours." Nora looked down at her. "My child belongs to herself. That is a pretty sentence. Judges prefer facts." Nora's hands were shaking now, so she curled them into fists. "You want a war?" Evelyn lifted her teacup. "I want order. War is what happens when people like you refuse it." Nora walked out before Evelyn could see the tears starting. By 4 that afternoon, Mara had called in a favor. By 6, Nora was sitting in a small office above a law firm that smelled of old paper-burnt coffee and radiator heat. Across from her sat Claire Donovan, family attorney, former prosecutor, and the first woman Nora had met in days who did not look at her like she was fragile. Claire wore a navy suit, no wedding ring, and reading glasses low on her nose. She listened without interrupting as Nora told her everything. The restaurant, the letter, Roman, Evelyn, the proposed agreement, the custody threat. When Nora finished, Claire leaned back and studied her. "Do you have documents?" Nora opened her bag. Bank statements, property records, copies of emails, photographs of cash ledgers Roman had once left unlocked, screenshots of Evelyn's messages, security invoices, medical bills for her father, notes she had made over 2 years without fully admitting why. Claire looked through them slowly, then she looked up. "You were preparing." Nora swallowed. "I was surviving." Claire's expression changed, not soft exactly. Respectful. "Good. Survival leaves paper trails." Mara reached for Nora's hand. Claire gathered the documents into a neat stack. "Here's what you need to understand. Evelyn Blackwell is not going to treat this like a family problem. She is going to treat you like a threat to be neutralized." Nora's throat tightened, and Roman Claire removed her glasses. "That depends on whether he is your husband or his mother's son." Outside the window, Milwaukee darkened under falling snow. Nora looked at the papers on Claire's desk, at the pieces of her life arranged like evidence, and understood the fight had already entered the room. The fight had already entered the room, and by the following morning, it had learned Nora's name. Claire called just after sunrise. Nora was awake before the phone rang, sitting at Mara's tiny kitchen table with a mug of tea gone cold between her hands. Sleep had become a place she visited in pieces. 10 minutes on the couch, 20 minutes after midnight, an hour near dawn if the baby allowed it, and fear did not crawl into bed beside her. Mara was still asleep in the other room. Downstairs, the bakery ovens had started warming, filling the apartment with the smell of yeast and sugar. It should have been comforting. Instead, Nora kept staring at the phone as if it were a match waiting to strike. When Claire's name lit the screen, Nora answered quickly. "Tell me." Claire did not waste time. "Evelyn hired Grant Holloway." Nora closed her eyes. "I do not know who that is." "You will. He is the kind of lawyer wealthy families hire when they want the court to look clean while they do something ugly." Nora's hand moved to her stomach. "What did he send a letter?" "Formal notice. They are claiming you abandoned the marital home, cut off reasonable access to Roman, and created emotional distress that could affect the child." The kitchen tilted slightly. "That is insane. It is strategy." Nora stood too quickly and the room swayed. She gripped the edge of the counter until it steadied. Claire's voice softened but did not lose its sharpness. "They are also suggesting you may be unstable due to pregnancy stress and marital paranoia. They are laying groundwork for emergency intervention after delivery." Nora laughed once, breathless and bitter. "Because I walked away from a setup they created. Because they think they can write the first version of the story before you get a chance to speak." Nora looked toward the bedroom where Mara slept, one arm hanging off the mattress, safe for a few more minutes before the world found them again. "What do? We answer through counsel. You do not call Roman. You do not answer Evelyn. You do not respond to anything directly, no matter how emotional they make it." Nora looked at her bare ring finger. "And if Roman shows up, do not be alone with him." The baby kicked then low and hard, as if objecting to all of it. Nora pressed her palm there. "I do not know how to protect her from people who own half the city." Claire was quiet for a beat. "You start by not confusing fear with defeat." By noon, the letter arrived in Nora's email. Mara read it over her shoulder and went pale with anger. "They make it sound like you ran off in a fit. That is the point. They do not mention Jade. They do not mention Evelyn." "No," Nora said. "They mention me crying, me leaving, me not answering calls, me being pregnant." Mara turned away and pressed both hands to the kitchen counter. "I want to break something." Nora stared at the screen until the words blurred. She had spent years in Roman's world, hearing men talk about leverage. She had thought she understood it. Money, secrets, threats, favors. Now she understood the cruelest kind of leverage was the ability to rename someone else's pain. Her grief had become instability. Her escape had become abandonment. Her silence had become proof. That afternoon, Claire asked Nora to come in and sign a response. Mara offered to go with her, but Nora refused. She needed 1 hour where she was not being held upright by her sister's love. The law office sat 5 blocks away. The air was brutally cold, the kind that made every breath feel metallic. Nora wrapped her scarf over her mouth and walked slowly, one hand supporting the weight of her belly. She was almost at the entrance when a black SUV pulled up beside the curb. She knew the sound before she saw the door open. Roman stepped out into the snow. For a second, neither of them moved. He looked worse than he had 2 days ago. His face was unshaven. There were shadows under his eyes. No overcoat, only a suit jacket against the freezing air, as if he had left somewhere in a hurry and forgotten weather was something other people had to obey. Nora. She turned toward the building. Do not. He crossed the sidewalk. I did not hire Holloway. She kept walking. But your mother did. That is not the same thing. She stopped then. Snow gathered in her hair. Her cheeks burned from the cold. It becomes the same when you let her speak for you. Roman's mouth tightened. His eyes moved over her face, then to her stomach, then back again. I told her to stand down. Nora almost smiled. Did she? He said nothing. That is what I thought. A man passed them on the sidewalk, slowing slightly before deciding not to get involved. People in cities had instincts about danger. They knew when a conversation looked private but sounded like weather before a storm. Roman lowered his voice. I confronted her about the restaurant. She admitted it. Congratulations. Nora, you found out your mother is cruel after she hurt me enough to leave. That is not courage, Roman. That is cleanup. He flinched, and she hated that part of her noticed. I should have seen it. Yes. I should have stopped it. Yes. I should have protected you. Her throat tightened. Yes. The word came out smaller than she wanted. Roman took a step closer, then stopped himself. That restraint hurt too. Everything hurt. His failure, his effort, the fact that she could still read him so easily. I need 5 minutes, he said. My lawyer said not to be alone with you. Then call her. Put her on speaker. I do not care. You always care. Not about that. The wind shoved between them. Nora's back ached. The baby shifted and pressure tightened low in her belly. Roman saw it. His face changed. You are freezing. I am fine. You are not fine. No, Roman, I am not. But cold is not the reason. A cab splashed slush near the curb. Roman glanced at it, then back at her. 5 minutes in the car. Heat on. Door unlocked. You can leave whenever you want. Nora should have said no. She knew that. But exhaustion made the world narrow. The office was only a few steps away, yet the car looked warm and Roman was standing there with his hands open, not reaching for her. She hated him for making gentleness look new. 5 minutes, she said. Inside the SUV, the heat wrapped around her so quickly her eyes stung. Roman stayed behind the wheel, both hands visible. He did not lock the doors. For several blocks he drove without speaking. Nora looked out the window at Milwaukee in winter. Gray buildings, salt-stained roads, people hunched into coats, a city going about its day while her life split into evidence accusations and old love sitting 6 inches away. Roman finally said, I moved out of the penthouse. She turned her head. What, I am staying at a hotel? Why? He kept his eyes on the road. Because every room sounded like you leaving. She looked away first. Do not believe him, she told herself. But memory was disobedient. It gave her Roman assembling the crib badly. Roman reading to children on the library rug. Roman pressing his hand to her stomach that morning. Roman in bed at 3 a.m, half asleep, pulling her close as if even unconscious he knew where home was. You do not get to say things like that unless you know what they cost, she said. I know. No, you do not. You think pain is something you can endure because endurance is familiar to you. But my pain was not dramatic. It was ordinary. It was breakfast alone. It was doctor appointments you missed. It was your mother correcting my life while you called it strategy. It was sleeping beside you and feeling like the other woman in your marriage to power. Roman's hands tightened on the steering wheel. The light ahead turned red. He stopped. Nora, I know I failed you. She let out a breath. I do not think you do. He looked at her then. I let the business take the best of me and gave you what was left. That silenced her. Outside, the red light glowed on his face. The old Roman would have defended himself. He would have explained pressure enemies' obligations, the family name. This Roman sounded like the truth had finally cut him somewhere deep enough to bleed. I told my mother if she keeps going after you, I will walk away, he said. Nora stared at him. From what? All of it. She laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. You would never. I would. No. You would threaten it. You would say it in a room where it sounded noble. Then someone would call. A shipment, a debt, a rival, a family emergency. And there you would be again choosing the throne because it knows how to need you louder than I do. Roman's face went pale beneath the winter light. The car behind them honked. He did not move. Nora looked forward. The light is green. Let them wait. That is the problem, Roman. You think the world can wait because you are hurting. He put the car in drive. Neither of them spoke until he pulled up outside Claire's office. Nora reached for the door. Roman said, "Tell me what to do." She closed her hand around the handle. I want you to stop asking me to teach you how to become a husband after I had to leave to get your attention. He swallowed. Nora. She opened the door. When your mother attacks me, stop telling me it is not you. Make it not you. Then she got out and walked into the building without looking back. 3 days later, Grant Holloway proposed a meeting. Claire said no. Grant asked again, this time with language polished enough to sound reasonable and sharp enough to cut if refused. Neutral location, private conference room. No press, no court filing if Nora was willing to hear terms. Claire read the message aloud, then looked at Nora over her glasses. It is a trap. Mara crossed her arms. Then we do not go. Nora sat on Claire's office couch, both hands folded over her stomach. She had not slept well since the car ride with Roman. His words kept returning at inconvenient times. I gave you what was left. She wished he had not said something true. Lies were easier to hate. I want to see her, Nora said. Claire's eyes narrowed. Evelyn? Yes. No. I need to know what she is really after. She is after control. No, Nora said. Control is what she uses. I want to know what she wants badly enough to risk Roman hating her. Claire was quiet. Mara shook her head. She wants your baby. The room went still around that sentence. Nora looked down at her belly. Then I need to look her in the eye when she says it. The meeting took place in a glass conference room overlooking Lake Michigan. The building was expensive in a way that did not announce itself. Quiet carpet, soft lights, receptionists who smiled without curiosity. Walls that had heard rich people threaten one another in pleasant voices. Evelyn was already seated when Nora entered with Claire. Grant Holloway sat beside her, silver-haired and handsome, with the calm expression of a man who had ruined lives by lunchtime and still made dinner reservations. Roman was not there. Nora noticed before she could stop herself. Evelyn noticed her noticing. My son's presence is unnecessary, she said. Nora sat across from her. Of course. You always did prefer speaking for him. Grant smiled. Let us keep this productive. Claire placed her folder on the table. Then stop threatening my client. No one is threatening anyone, Grant said. We are here to discuss stability for the child. Nora looked at Evelyn. My child. Evelyn's gaze moved to Nora's stomach with a tenderness that made Nora's skin crawl. Blackwell blood. Nora felt Claire shift beside her, a silent warning. Evelyn continued. Here is what I am prepared to offer. You will remain in a residence we provide through the birth. Full medical care, security, staff, financial support. After delivery, we establish a custody arrangement that allows you generous time with the child while preserving her rightful place within the Blackwell family." Nora stared at her. "You want me kept. I want my granddaughter safe. From what instability? Poverty. Emotional decisions made by a woman who has confused pride with motherhood." Claire's voice cut in. "Careful." Evelyn did not look at her. "You cannot give that child what we can. I can love her. Love is not a school. Love is not protection. Love is not a judge, a doctor, a secure home, a future." Nora leaned forward. "No. Love is why I know she is not property." For a moment, Evelyn's expression sharpened into something almost like anger. Then she opened the folder in front of her. "Your sister Mara has $11,000 in credit card debt, a car loan past due, and no meaningful savings. The bakery below her apartment is behind on rent. If the owner sells, she will be displaced within 60 days. Nora's hands went cold. Claire said, "Mrs. Blackwell." Evelyn kept going. "Your father's care facility costs $4,800 a month. Mara has been covering what you cannot. Admirable but unsustainable." Nora felt her pulse in her throat. "You investigated my family. I assessed risk." "You mean weakness." "I mean reality." Nora stood so fast her chair scraped the floor. Claire touched her wrist. Evelyn's eyes remained fixed on Nora. "Sit down." "No, you have not heard the most important part. I have heard enough. Jade Calloway is pregnant." The words did not explode. They hollowed the room out. Nora stared at her. Grant lowered his eyes to the papers in front of him as if he were respecting grief and not helping stage it. Evelyn's voice softened. 3 months. She came to me frightened and alone. Her family would be humiliated. Roman does not know yet. Nora could not breathe. Claire's voice sounded far away. "Do not respond." Evelyn slid a photograph across the table. Jade leaving a clinic, sunglasses on one hand over her stomach. Nora looked at the picture and hated herself for looking. "That proves nothing," Claire said. "I have medical documentation, then produce it through proper channels. In time." Nora sat slowly, because her knees could no longer be trusted. Evelyn watched her with calm satisfaction. "You see the difficulty? If this becomes public, a court will see a wife who abandoned her husband after discovering another woman may be carrying his child. It creates an unfortunate impression." Nora whispered, "You made her do this too." Evelyn smiled faintly. "Jade understands sacrifice." "No," Nora said, lifting her eyes. "Jade understands payment." That was the first time Grant looked uncomfortable. Evelyn's voice cooled. "You are outmatched, Nora. Take the residence. Take the money. Take the dignity I am still willing to leave you." Nora stood again, slower this time. "I am not making a deal with the woman who tried to buy my child before she took her first breath." Evelyn looked at Claire. "Control your client." Claire closed her folder. "My client is leaving." Nora walked out of the room with her head high. She made it to the elevator before her body betrayed her. Claire caught her by the elbow as Nora bent forward, one hand on the wall, dragging air into lungs that felt too small. "She is lying," Claire said. Nora shook her head. She was too pleased. "That does not make it true. It makes it useful." The elevator doors opened. Nora stepped inside. In the mirrored wall, she saw her own face. Pale, eyes wide, mouth set. A woman cornered but not finished. By the time she reached Mara's apartment that evening, she had made her decision. Mara opened the door and knew immediately. "No." Nora walked past her. "I need the gray suitcase." "Nora." "She knows about Dad. She knows about your debts. She knows everything." Mara followed her into the bedroom. "So we fight here. She will make here unsafe. She does not get to push you out of every place. Nora stopped beside the bed. "Mara, she does not want me gone. She wants me desperate. There is a difference." Her sister's face crumpled with anger she had nowhere to put. "Where will you go?" Nora pulled a folded paper from her coat pocket. Claire had pressed it into her hand before she left the office. "Bayfield. Claire's aunt has a cabin near the lake, empty for the winter. Wisconsin in January while pregnant. Great plan." "I know. You cannot run forever." Nora looked at her. "I only need to run long enough to think." Mara sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly looking younger than she was. "What do I tell Roman?" Nora opened the drawer and took out the note he had sent with the flowers. "Come home. We can fix this." She folded it once more and put it back. "Tell him I finally chose somewhere his name cannot open the door." They packed in silence after that. Not much. Clothes, vitamins, cash, medical papers, the ultrasound photo, her mother's rosary, a coat warm enough for lake country. Mara slipped a jar of bakery cookies into the side pocket of the bag and cried like she was angry at the tears. Near midnight, Nora stood by the apartment door. Mara held her tightly, careful of the belly fierce enough to hurt. "Call me when you get there." "I will." "No, Nora. Promise me." Nora closed her eyes. "I promise." Downstairs, the bakery was dark. The street was quiet. Snow fell softly under the orange glow of the lamps. Nora got into a cab and did not look back until Mara's building disappeared behind the turn. At the bus station, she paid cash for a ticket north. The woman at the counter glanced at her stomach, then at her face, and asked no questions. Nora sat near the back of the bus with her suitcase under her feet and her hand resting over her daughter. As Milwaukee faded into winter darkness, her phone buzzed. Roman. She let it ring until it stopped. Then came a message. "Please talk to me." Nora turned the phone off. Outside the window, the highway stretched ahead, black and wet and unknown. For the first time in days, no one was standing in front of her. No Roman, no Evelyn, no lawyers, no velvet room full of threats dressed as concern. Only the road, the snow, and the small, steady movement beneath her palm. Nora leaned her head against the cold glass. "I do not know where we are going, baby," she whispered. "But we are not going back." The road north did not feel like escape at first. It felt like punishment. The bus heater breathed dry air against Nora's legs while winter pressed its face to the windows. Milwaukee fell away behind her in a smear of streetlights and wet pavement. The farther she traveled, the fewer lights there were. Houses became farms. Farms became dark fields. Dark fields became forests standing shoulder to shoulder beneath a hard black sky. Nora did not sleep. Every time her eyes closed, she saw Roman in the restaurant. Jade's hand beneath his mouth. Evelyn's cream coat across the tea room table. The photograph of Jade leaving that clinic with one hand curved over her stomach. Pregnant. The word sat inside Nora like a stone. She wanted to believe it was another lie. She wanted to believe Evelyn had invented the whole thing because cruelty was the only language that woman spoke fluently. But belief had become expensive, and Nora had already spent too much of herself on men who asked for trust while hiding knives behind their backs. Her phone remained off in her purse. Still, she felt it, like a living thing, like Roman's voice trapped inside plastic and glass. The baby shifted just after dawn, a slow roll beneath Nora's palm. She looked down at her stomach under the heavy coat and tried to smile. "You and me," she whispered. The woman across the aisle glanced over, then looked away with the careful mercy of strangers. Bayfield was smaller than Nora expected. The bus left her near a snow-crusted curb outside a closed visitor center. Lake Superior lay beyond the town, vast and gray and restless, pushing cold air through the streets. The houses looked weather-worn and stubborn, painted in faded blues, whites, and reds. Smoke rose from chimneys. A church bell rang somewhere in the distance. Nothing moved quickly. Nora stood with her suitcase in one hand and Claire's directions in the other, wondering how a place could look so quiet and still feel like the edge of the world. The cabin sat a mile outside town, tucked behind a line of bare birch trees. Claire's aunt had left the key beneath a cracked ceramic frog on the porch. The lock stuck twice before opening. Inside, the air smelled of dust cedar and old smoke. The cabin was nothing like the penthouse. The ceiling was low. The kitchen floor tilted slightly near the sink. The furniture did not match. The windows rattled when the wind came hard from the lake. Nora stepped inside, shut the door, and leaned her back against it. No guards, no marble hallway, no elevator camera, no portrait of a dead Blackwell watching from a wall. Just one small room, a cold stove, a faded couch, and the sound of wind moving through the trees. For the first time since the Verity room, Nora took a full breath. Then she cried. Not loudly, not long. She was too tired for that. She slid down the door until she was sitting on the floor, coat still on suitcase beside her, one hand on her belly. The tears came quietly, then stopped quietly, as if even grief was learning to conserve strength. After that, she stood. She found old blankets in a trunk and wrapped herself in two of them while the heat woke with reluctant clanks from the baseboards. She unpacked only what she needed: vitamins in the bathroom cabinet, cash under the loose floorboard near the bed, rosary beside the lamp, ultrasound photo taped inside the closet door where no one else would see it. By evening, snow began to fall. Nora made tea in a chipped blue mug and stood at the kitchen window watching the trees disappear into white. She should have felt safe. Instead, she felt the size of the silence. In Chicago, silence had always meant something was being hidden. In Roman's penthouse, silence meant men were speaking in rooms where she was not allowed. At Evelyn's table, silence meant judgment. In Bayfield, silence had no shape yet. It was simply there, waiting for Nora to decide whether it was peace or loneliness. The baby kicked. Nora touched her stomach. "I know," she said softly. "I'm trying too." The dizziness came 2 mornings later. At first she blamed the long trip, the cold, the stress, the thin soup she had forced herself to eat the night before. She stood from the kitchen chair and the floor rose toward her too quickly. She caught the counter with both hands and held on while black dots swarmed the edges of her vision. The baby moved. That scared her more than the dizziness. By noon, Nora had wrapped herself in her coat and walked into town one careful step at a time, following a hand-painted sign to the clinic. The building was small, white, and plain, with a ramp that had been recently salted. Inside, a bell above the door chimed. The waiting room held 6 chairs, a basket of children's books, and a coffee machine that sounded like it was losing a private war. A woman behind the desk looked up. "Can I help you?" Nora gripped the strap of her bag. "I need to see a doctor. Appointment number." The woman's eyes moved to Nora's stomach, then to her face. She did not ask questions. "Sit down, honey." 20 minutes later, Nora sat on an exam table while Dr. Helen Reese wrapped a blood pressure cuff around her arm. Doctor. Reese was in her late 50s with short gray hair, warm brown skin, and eyes that missed very little. She wore no makeup, no jewelry, and the expression of a woman who had delivered babies in snowstorms and argued with insurance companies before breakfast. "When are you due?" Dr. Reese asked. "About 3 months. About is for soup recipes. Babies need dates." Nora gave her the information she had. Dr. Reese listened to the baby's heartbeat, checked Nora's blood pressure twice, then looked at her over the chart. "You're dehydrated. Blood pressure is higher than I like. Stress is not helping." Nora looked away. Dr. Reese set down the chart. "You running from someone?" Nora's head snapped up. What I asked if you're running from someone. No. The answer came too fast. Dr. Reese's face did not change. All right, let me say it another way. You showed up in my town 6 months pregnant. No local records paying cash, wearing city shoes in lake country and flinching every time the front door opens. I've been doing this too long to confuse that with a vacation. Nora swallowed. I'm not in immediate danger. That was not my question. Nora looked down at her hands. Dr. Reese waited. The waiting was kind. Not soft, but kind. I needed somewhere quiet, Nora said finally. Quiet can help. So can prenatal care. I can pay for today. I did not ask what you can pay for. I said you need care. Nora blinked quickly, furious at the tears that rose without permission. Why would you help me? Dr. Reese pulled her stool closer. Because that's what people are supposed to do. The sentence entered Nora gently, then broke something open. She turned her face away. Dr. Reese pretended not to notice. Weekly visits, the doctor said, writing on a pad. More water, more food. Less walking alone in weather that could freeze the truth out of a liar. There is a pharmacy 2 streets over. Tell Leon I sent you. If he gives you trouble, tell him I know about the fishing license incident from 1998. Despite herself, Nora laughed. It came out rusty. Dr. Reese smiled once. There she is. Walking back to the cabin, Nora stopped at a small diner with fogged windows and a red sign that read Ruth's. Inside, the air smelled of coffee, bacon, and cinnamon. A few locals sat at the counter speaking in low voices. A radio played old country music near the kitchen. The waitress, a round woman with silver streaks in her hair, appeared with a coffee pot in one hand. You look frozen. I feel frozen. Sit before you prove it. Nora slid into a booth. The woman glanced at her stomach. Decaf tea? Yes, please. Food. I'm not very hungry. That was not what I asked. Nora looked up. The woman smiled. I'm Ruth. I own the place, which means I get to be bossy before noon. Nora ordered toast and eggs. Ruth brought pancakes too. I only ordered eggs. The baby ordered pancakes. Nora stared at the plate, then laughed again. Softer this time. At the next table, an old man in a wool cap folded his newspaper and looked at the loose button on Nora's coat. You staying at Eleanor's cabin? Nora went still. Ruth glanced at him. Cal. The old man lifted both hands. Just asking. I fixed that porch rail last winter. If it still wobbles, blame the wood, not me. Nora studied him. He had a weathered face, kind eyes, and hands that looked built for repairing things that had no interest in being repaired. Yes, she said carefully. I'm staying there. Rail's still bad. A little. I'll come by tomorrow. That is not necessary. Cal took a sip of coffee. Most useful things aren't. The next day he came by with a toolbox and a thermos. Nora watched from the doorway as he worked on the porch rail in the cold. He did not ask about Roman. He did not ask why she was alone. He only tightened screws, replaced a split piece of wood, and told her the cabin roof would hold unless the lake decided otherwise. When he finished, he handed her the thermos. Soup. Ruth made too much. Did she know? But that's what we say when pride is listening. Nora held the warm thermos against her chest. Thank you. Cal nodded toward the cabin. Big houses don't mean safe houses. Nora looked at him. You know that from experience. Everyone old knows that from experience. He left before she could ask more. Days began to take shape. Clinic on Mondays. Ruth's diner when Nora could manage the walk. Tea by the window. Short naps under heavy quilts. Calls to Mara from a prepaid phone, always brief, always careful. Claire sent updates through a secure email account Ruth's nephew had helped Nora set up at the library. Roman had not filed anything. Evelyn had. Grant Holloway was still pressing, still collecting, still shaping Nora into a woman the court could distrust. Then for 6 straight days, nothing happened. No emails, no legal letters, no sudden calls, no black SUVs passing the cabin. The quiet should have soothed her. Instead, it made Nora restless. She had lived too long around powerful people to mistake silence for surrender. On the 7th day, she bought a new phone at a gas station 20 miles away. New number, cash plan, no name attached. The first text arrived before sunset. Unknown number. Running is dramatic. It is not effective. E. Nora stood in the cabin kitchen until the room felt too small to hold her breathing. She removed the SIM card with shaking fingers, walked down to the frozen edge of the lake and threw it into a patch of black water between sheets of ice. The wind slapped her face. For a second, she imagined Evelyn somewhere warm, smiling at the thought of Nora discovering that no distance was far enough. That night, Nora did not turn off the lamp. The old phone stayed at the bottom of her suitcase for 3 more days. She had destroyed the SIM, but the device still held the past. Photos, messages, voicemails. Roman's name waiting like a bruise she kept pressing to see if it still hurt. On a night when the wind screamed so loudly the cabin walls seemed to bend, Nora gave in. She plugged it into the outlet beside the bed. The screen lit up after several minutes. 58 missed calls. 41 text messages, 26 voicemails. Her thumb hovered above Roman's name. Then she pressed play. The first message was controlled. "Nora, it's me. Please call me. I know you're angry. You have every right. But we need to talk." The second was sharper. "My mother had no right to approach you. I'm handling it." Nora almost deleted the rest at that sentence. "I'm handling it." The old spell. But she kept listening. By the 10th message, Roman's voice had lost its polish. "I went to Mara's. She told me nothing." "Good. I'm glad she told me nothing. I deserve that." By the 15th, he sounded exhausted. "I keep reading your letter. I know you said not to look for the woman who used to wait. I'm trying to understand that." "I am. But Nora, I don't know how to be in a world where you are somewhere scared and I am not allowed to reach you." Nora closed her eyes. By the 21st, his voice broke. "Jade is not pregnant." Nora opened her eyes. The room became very still. Roman continued through the small speaker, rough and low. "She was never pregnant. My mother paid her. Grant helped make the documents look real. Jade admitted it when I confronted her. I have the recording. I have the transfers. Nora, it was a lie. All of it." Nora replayed the message. Then again, "Not pregnant. Not pregnant." Relief rose, first violent and bright. Then rage swallowed it. Evelyn had taken the worst pain Nora could imagine and dressed it in paperwork. The next message played automatically. "I hired someone to find you." Nora froze. Roman inhaled on the recording. I know what that sounds like. I told myself I only needed to know you were safe. He traced you north, Wisconsin, near the lake. Before he gave me the town, I told him to stop." There was a silence long enough that Nora thought the message had ended. Then Roman spoke again. "Because if I knew exactly where you were, I would come. And if I came, it would be for me, not for you. I am trying not to love you like ownership anymore." Nora pressed the phone against her chest and stared at the dark window. Outside, snow moved in silver sheets through the porch light. The final message was from that morning. "I will send support through Claire. I will not call again unless you call me. I will not look for you. But when our daughter is born, I want to be near enough to come if you let me. Not in the room. Not making demands. Just there. I want her to know her father showed up, even if he showed up late." Nora sat in the dark for a long time. Then she called him. He answered before the first ring finished. "Nora." Just her name. No command. No anger. Only relief so raw she almost ended the call to avoid feeling it. "She is not pregnant," Nora asked. "No." "If you are lying to me, Roman, I am not. If this is some new layer of your mother's game, I will disappear so deeply you will spend the rest of your life wondering whether your daughter has your eyes." "I know." His answer was quiet. "I have the recording. Claire has a copy. Jade is leaving the country. I paid her to sign a statement before she went." "You paid her. To tell the truth, you always think money can clean what money dirtied." He accepted that without defense. "You're right." Nora did not know what to do with that either. A log shifted in the small stove. Wind struck the window. She could hear Roman breathing on the other end, controlled but uneven. "Did you know?" she asked. "No. About the dinner, no. About your mother wanting me gone?" He did not answer quickly enough. Nora's heart sank. "I knew she did not think you belonged," he said. "I knew she was pushing the Callaway alliance. I knew she was cruel. I told myself I could contain it. Contain her. Yes. You couldn't. No." The truth sat between them, ugly but solid. Nora looked toward the closet where the ultrasound photo was taped inside the door. "What do you want from me?" Roman's voice was almost a whisper. "Everything. But I'm not asking for it. Then what are you asking? To prove I can be someone you do not have to run from." Nora closed her eyes. "I need space." "Okay." The word stunned her. No argument, no persuasion, no demand wrapped in concern. Just okay. You are not going to ask where I am. No. You are not going to come. No. Why? His breath shook. "Because loving you cannot keep meaning I get what I want." Nora turned her face into the pillow before the tears could fall freely. "When the baby comes," Roman said carefully, "I would like to be nearby. Only if you allow it. I'll think about it. Thank you." It was such a small answer. Such a quiet answer. Nothing like the man who once moved through rooms as if the world had been built to clear a path for him. Nora ended the call before softness could become surrender. The cabin felt different afterward. Not safe exactly. Safety was no longer a thing she trusted quickly, but the walls felt less narrow. The silence less hungry. The following week, Claire called while Nora was leaving the clinic. "Nora," she said, and something in her voice made Nora stop on the salted sidewalk. "What happened?" "I need you to sit down. I'm outside." "Then hold on to something." Nora gripped the railing. Claire took a breath. "I have been looking into Thomas Blackwell's death. Roman's father. The man Evelyn had spoken of as if his memory belonged to her." Nora stared at the snow-packed street. "Why?" "Because Evelyn's behavior has a pattern. Control isolation, financial pressure, medical access. I wanted to know how she gained full control after Thomas died, and the official cause was heart failure. But there was a toxicology report that never made it into the final file. Elevated digitalis. He was not prescribed anything that should have produced those levels." Nora's fingers tightened around the railing. "What are you saying?" "I am saying Evelyn may have poisoned her husband." For a moment, the whole town seemed to go silent. No cars, no wind, no distant gulls over the lake. Just Nora's heartbeat and Claire's voice. There was a private nurse who signed an NDA and disappeared from the state. A doctor retired 6 months later. The medical examiner had gambling debts that were paid off through a company tied to the Blackwell family. Nora's stomach turned. "Does Roman know?" "Not yet." Nora looked out toward the lake, gray and endless beneath the winter sky. She thought of Evelyn's calm hands around a teacup. She thought of the way Evelyn had looked at Nora's unborn child and called it Blackwell blood. She thought of Roman raised by a woman who might have murdered his father and called it duty. The baby moved beneath her coat. Nora pressed a hand there and whispered before she could stop herself. "What did you do, Evelyn?" Across the street, Ruth stepped out of the diner and lifted one hand in greeting. Cal's truck rolled slowly past porch tools rattling in the back. Smoke rose from chimneys along the hill. The town kept breathing around her. For the first time, Nora understood Bayfield was not a hiding place anymore. It was the first place that had chosen to see her without asking what she was worth. That afternoon, Nora did not call Roman right away. She walked back to the cabin through snow that came down soft and steady, turning the road white behind her as if the town itself were covering her tracks. Lake Superior moved under a sky the color of pewter. The wind carried the smell of ice pine and wood smoke. By the time she reached the porch, Cal was there with a bag of groceries tucked under one arm and a coil of weather stripping in the other. "Door leaks," he said. Nora looked at him, still holding Claire's words inside her like broken glass. Cal's eyes narrowed. "You all right?" It was such a simple question. No strategy behind it. No hidden cost. Just a man standing in the cold asking because he cared whether the answer was no. Nora's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Cal set the groceries down and climbed the porch steps slowly. "Come inside," he said. "You're shaking." "I'm not cold, I know." Inside, Cal made tea without asking where she kept anything. He had learned the cabin in ways people learned places they had repaired over and over. He moved around the small kitchen with the quiet ease of someone who understood that panic hated noise. Nora sat at the table, one hand on her belly. Cal set the mug in front of her. "Bad news." She wrapped both hands around the cup. Maybe the kind of news that explains everything. Cal sat across from her. That kind usually hurts. Nora stared into the tea. Roman's father might not have died the way everyone thought. Cal did not ask who Roman was. In a small town, people learned without being told. Not through gossip, not always. Through the shape of a woman's silences. Through the way she checked windows when a truck passed. Through the name she did not say unless she had to. "Someone hurt him?" Cal asked. Nora swallowed. Maybe Evelyn did. The old man's face did not change much, but his eyes darkened. That the mother, Nora, nodded. Cal leaned back in his chair and looked toward the window where snow gathered on the sill. "Some people call control love because it sounds nicer." Nora closed her eyes. "I have to tell Roman." "Then tell him." "I don't know what it will do to him." Cal looked back at her. Truth does what it does. Lying just lets it choose the worst hour. Roman answered on the second ring. This time he did not say her name like a man drowning. He was quiet first, as if afraid even his breathing might make her hang up. "Nora." She stood by the window with her arms folded under her belly. Snow blurred the trees into pale shadows. "Claire found something about your father." The silence changed. Not empty now. Alert. What kind of something? She found an old toxicology report. Digitalis. He was not prescribed it. Roman did not speak. Nora pressed her eyes shut. She thinks Evelyn may have had something to do with his death. For a long time she heard only the faint static of the call. Then Roman said, "Send it to me." His voice had gone flat. That frightened her more than rage would have. "Roman, send it to me. Do not go to her alone." He gave a low laugh with no humor in it. "I have spent my whole life alone with her. That is not what I mean. I know what you mean." The old Roman would have ended the call there. He would have taken the information and moved like a blade through the city, silent and certain and unreachable. This Roman stayed on the line. His voice lowered. Did Claire say it is real? She said it is not enough yet, but it points somewhere. It points to my mother. Nora did not answer. Roman breathed once, slow and rough. My father was not soft, he said. He was not a good man. He could be cruel. But the year before he died, he started talking about changing things. Nora leaned against the window frame. You told me once he wanted to sell pieces of the business. I thought he was tired. I thought he was getting old. Maybe Evelyn thought so too. The words sat between them. Roman said, I need to see the file. Claire will send it through her system. I'll wait. Again, that restraint. Again, it unsettled her. Roman. Yes. Do not become what she taught you to be. His breath caught. When he answered, his voice was quieter. I am trying not to. Claire sent the files to Roman that evening. By morning, Roman had sent back more. Old security logs from the Lake Forest estate. A list of staff who had worked there the week Thomas Blackwell died. Emails between Evelyn and the private physician. Payments from a Blackwell shell company to the medical examiner. A scanned copy of a non-disclosure agreement signed by a nurse named Paula Hensley, witnessed by Grant Holloway. Claire called Nora after reviewing them. He did not hold back. Nora sat on the edge of the bed, tying her boots. Is that surprise in your voice? It is professional caution leaving my body. Can we use it? Not alone, but it is enough to go to someone who can. Police Federal. Local police in Chicago have been eating at Blackwell tables for decades. Nora looked toward the closet door where the ultrasound photo was taped inside. And Roman says he has a contact. Nora gave a tired smile. Of course he does. This one is not family. Agent Mason Reed. Organized crime. He has been circling the Blackwells for years. Nora stood slowly. Can we trust him? Claire paused. We can trust that he wants Evelyn. 2 days later, Roman walked into a federal building in Chicago carrying a black leather folder and no lawyer. Agent Mason Reed met him in a room without windows. Reed was in his 40s, square-jawed, calm-eyed, and dressed like a man who did not need an expensive suit to feel powerful. He had watched Roman Blackwell avoid charges for 7 years. He had watched witnesses forget ledgers vanish, judges recuse themselves, and informants change their minds after visits from men with polite voices. So when Roman placed the folder on the table, Reed did not touch it. What is this evidence? Against who, my mother? Reed studied him. That family loyalty finally wearing thin Roman sat down. My daughter is going to be born soon. That's supposed to mean something to me. It means I am done pretending. Blood makes poison holy. Reed's eyes shifted for the first time. Roman opened the folder. Jade Calloway gave a recorded statement. Evelyn paid her to fake a pregnancy and helped fabricate medical documents. Grant Holloway knew. There are transfers, emails, and voice recordings. There is also evidence Evelyn interfered with records surrounding my father's death. Reed still did not touch the folder. Why bring this to me? Because if I handle it my way, people die. And you found religion? No. Roman met his eyes. I found consequences. Reed leaned back. You expect immunity? No. That surprised him. Roman continued. I expect you to protect Nora and my child from my mother. Anything else is negotiable. Reed looked at him for a long moment. Then he pulled the folder closer. In Lake Forest, Evelyn Blackwell poured tea in the morning room while snow slid down the tall windows in thin white trails. Roman arrived at 10. No guards followed him inside. No driver waited by the door. He had come alone because some rooms had to be faced without witnesses even when they were full of ghosts. Evelyn looked up from the tea service. You look tired. Roman stood across from her. You look pleased. I often am. He placed a copy of the toxicology report on the table. The silver teapot paused halfway over the cup, only for a breath. But Roman saw it. He had been raised by this woman. He knew the tiny betrayals of her body. A blink held too long. A finger tightening around porcelain. A silence placed carefully where outrage should have been. Evelyn set the teapot down. "What is this?" "You know." Her face smoothed. "I know many things. Be specific." "Did you kill him?" The room changed. Outside wind worried the glass. Somewhere in the old house, a clock began to chime. Evelyn folded her hands in her lap. "Your father was going to destroy everything." Roman felt the sentence enter him like a knife that had been waiting years for the right ribs. "That is not an answer. It is the only answer that matters." He stared at her. Thomas Blackwell had been a hard man, a dangerous man, a man who taught his son to shoot before he taught him to apologize. Roman had hated him, feared him, wanted his approval with a hunger that humiliated him even now. But he had been alive, and Evelyn had decided he should not be. Roman sat down slowly. "You poisoned him." Evelyn's mouth tightened. "He was ill." "You poisoned him." "He was weak." Roman leaned forward. "You poisoned him." For the first time in his memory, his mother looked away. Not far, not long. Enough. Roman's throat closed. Evelyn recovered quickly. He wanted to dismantle what generations built. He wanted to sell roots, cut ties, bring in lawyers, accountants, federal oversight. He dressed cowardice in language about legacy. He would have left us exposed. He was trying to leave. He was trying to make us ordinary. Roman almost laughed. The sound died in his chest. "So, you killed him." Evelyn's gaze sharpened. "I preserved the family. Is that what you call it when you destroy everyone inside it?" Her face hardened. "You stand there judging me because a pretty teacher convinced you love is cleaner than power." Roman stood. "No. I judge you because my wife had to flee while pregnant to understand what safety feels like." Evelyn rose too. "Your wife is a temporary illness." Roman's hand curled at his side. "She is the mother of my child. She is the reason you are standing here with a dead man's paperwork and a conscience you cannot afford." Roman looked at her, and for once the fear he had carried since boyhood did not answer. "You taught me that power means no one can make you kneel," he said. "But you have been kneeling to it your whole life." Evelyn's eyes flashed. "My poor boy. You still think love makes you noble. It makes you usable." Roman picked up the folder. "No. It makes me human. You should try it before you die alone." He walked out while she was still standing. In the car halfway down the long drive, his phone rang. "Nora." He pulled over before answering. "Did you see her?" she asked. "Yes." And he watched snow gather on the windshield. She did it. Nora did not speak. Roman's hand tightened around the phone. "I thought I would feel rage." "What do you feel?" He looked back at the house through the rearview mirror. White stone, black shutters, tall windows, a beautiful prison disguised as inheritance. "Orphaned," he said. The word was so quiet Nora almost missed it. Her voice softened. "I am sorry." Roman closed his eyes. For what? That the truth had to be this ugly. He breathed out slowly. "I recorded part of it." "Roman." "I know." "Does she know?" "She saw the phone before I left." Nora went still on the other end. "Then she is not finished." Evelyn was not finished. 2 nights later, a black SUV rolled slowly past the cabin in Bayfield. Nora saw it from the kitchen window. The headlights moved without hurry, cutting across the snow, touching the porch, the bare trees, the frozen road. The SUV did not stop. It did not need to. Its purpose was not arrival. Its purpose was memory. Nora stepped back from the window. The baby shifted hard beneath her ribs. She turned off the kitchen light. Outside, the SUV disappeared around the bend. 5 minutes later, Cal called. "That vehicle yours? No. Thought not." Nora moved to the door and checked the lock. Cal's voice stayed steady. "Stay inside." Ruth called Sheriff Bell. "Annie is on her way to you from the back road. Annie should not come here. She already left." Nora looked through the dark window, trying to see movement between trees. "Cal. Yeah, I am scared. I know. Be scared behind a locked door. That's what doors are for." The line clicked. Nora went to the kitchen and took the largest knife from the drawer. Her hand shook around the handle. She stood in the dark cabin, one palm pressed to her stomach, listening to the wind and the old wood settling and every sound that might have been tires on snow. A soft knock came at the back door. Nora nearly dropped the knife. "It's Annie," a woman whispered. "Do not stab me. I brought a flashlight and terrible timing." Nora opened the door just enough to pull her inside. Annie Brooks stood there in a red knit hat, paint on one cheek, cheeks flushed from the cold. "You're carrying a knife. You're breaking into a pregnant woman's cabin at night." "Fair." Red and blue lights flashed across the trees 10 minutes later. Sheriff Bell, a broad woman with gray blonde hair and a voice like gravel, took Nora's statement in the kitchen while Annie made cocoa badly, and Cal stood on the porch with a shotgun Nora was fairly sure had been loaded since 1973. "They did not threaten you?" the sheriff asked. "No. Did not come to the door, no. Just drove past slow." Nora looked at her. "I know what it was." Sheriff Bell nodded once. "So do I." By midnight, Agent Reed had the report. By morning, Roman had it too. He called Nora, voice cold enough to frighten her. "I am coming." "No. Nora. No. That is what she wants. She wants you emotional. She wants you moving fast. She wants proof that you are still her son." On the other end, Roman said nothing. Nora softened her voice, but not her words. "I am safe. I am not alone. That is what she does not understand." His breathing was rough. "Someone drove past the cabin where my pregnant wife is sleeping. Your pregnant wife has a sheriff, a doctor, a painter, a diner owner, and an old man with a shotgun." Despite everything, Roman laughed once. It broke quickly. "I hate this. I know. I hate not being there. I know. But you are listening." The silence that followed felt different, heavy but not empty. Finally, Roman said yes. That yes carried more weight than any promise he had made before. Federal arrests began quietly. Not Evelyn first. Reed was too careful for that. He picked at the edges. A retired doctor in Naples, a former medical examiner in a suburb outside Chicago, 2 shell company managers, 1 private accountant who cried before the first question finished. Grant Holloway lasted less than 6 hours after agents arrived at his office. He had spent his career making powerful people look innocent. He knew exactly how guilt appeared on paper, and he knew Evelyn would not bleed for him. He gave them the documents. Jade Calloway signed a full statement from a hotel suite in Miami before leaving for London. She admitted Evelyn paid her to flirt with Roman, stage the restaurant moment, fake the pregnancy, and terrify Nora into surrendering custody. The nurse, Paula Hensley, was found outside Tucson under a different last name. She was older now, widowed, and tired of answering the door with fear in her hand. She told Agent Reed that Thomas Blackwell had not seemed like a dying man until Evelyn began personally managing his medication. When Reed called Roman with the update, Roman stood in the empty penthouse for the last time. Movers had already taken the furniture. Evelyn's chosen art was gone from the walls. The nursery crib, half-built and abandoned, stood in the middle of the room like a question. Roman touched the unfinished rail. His phone was still against his ear. Reed said, "We are moving on her tomorrow." Roman looked at the crib. "Do it before breakfast. She hates being interrupted before tea." Reed almost smiled. "You want to be there?" "No." Then Roman looked at Nora's letter folded in his jacket pocket. Yes. Evelyn Blackwell was arrested at the Lake Forest estate at 7:17 in the morning. She came down the staircase in a pearl-colored robe as federal agents entered through the front hall. Her silver hair was loose over one shoulder. For one surreal second, she looked less like a crime matriarch and more like a woman disturbed from sleep. Then her spine straightened. Agent Reed read the warrant. Evelyn looked past him and saw Roman standing near the open door. Her face did not change. Only her eyes did. "You did this," she said. Roman held her gaze. "No, you did." Agents took her hands. She did not resist when they cuffed her. Evelyn Blackwell knew theater. She knew cameras waited beyond gates. She knew panic made people look guilty, and she had always preferred looking inevitable. As they led her outside, reporters shouted from behind the line of federal vehicles. "Mrs. Blackwell, did you kill your husband? Did you frame your daughter-in-law? Where is Roman Blackwell?" Evelyn kept her chin lifted. Then she saw the paper in Roman's hand. Nora's letter. For the first time, something cracked across her face. Not grief. Recognition. Roman did not speak. He let her be taken past him into the waiting car. As the door shut, Evelyn's eyes stayed on him through the glass. Roman watched until the car disappeared beyond the gates. Then he walked back into the house where he had been raised and felt nothing inside it call him home. Nora went into labor during a storm. It began before dawn with a deep pain that pulled her out of sleep and left her gripping the edge of the mattress. For one groggy second, she thought it was fear again. Fear had a way of living in the body, tightening where old wounds remembered. Then the pain came again. Lower, stronger. Her water broke on the cabin floor at 5:19. Nora stared down at it. "Oh," she whispered. "Now." The baby answered with a hard twist. The roads were already bad. Snow lashed the windows. Wind shoved against the cabin so fiercely that the porch boards groaned. Nora called Dr. Reese first. The doctor answered with no greeting. "How far apart?" 7 minutes, maybe 6. "Can you breathe through them?" "I am choosing not to answer that politely." "Good. You still have fight in you." Dr. Reese told her to call Ruth, who called Sheriff Bell, who called Cal, who was already warming up his truck because the man had instincts older than weather reports. Only after all of that did Nora call Roman. He answered instantly. "Nora, it's time." Silence. Then a sound like he had stood too fast. "Where are you, Bayfield Clinic? Maybe the hospital if road's clear. I'm already close." Nora closed her eyes through another contraction. "How close, Ashland? You said you would stay 2 towns away." "I did." A laugh broke out of her and turned into a gasp. "You are impossible. I am trying to be conveniently impossible. Do not come into the room unless I say. I won't. Do not argue with Dr. Reese. I won't. Do not scare anyone." A pause. "I'll do my best." "Roman, I won't scare anyone." By the time Cal's truck reached the clinic, Nora was sweating beneath her coat and cursing with enough creativity that Cal looked impressed. Dr. Reese met them at the door. Wheelchair Nora glared. "I can walk. You can also fall. Sit down." Nora sat. The clinic was small, too small for the enormity of what was happening. Ruth arrived with towels and coffee no one drank. Annie came with a bag of clothes Nora had forgotten to pack. Sheriff Bell stood near the entrance watching the road as if she could arrest the storm for obstruction. Roman arrived 40 minutes later. He came through the front door covered in snow, his dark coat open, his face white with fear. Every conversation in the waiting area stopped. Roman Blackwell still had that effect on rooms. Then Cal stepped in front of him. "Wash your hands." Roman blinked. What Cal pointed down the hall. "Sink is there. She does not need Chicago on your fingers." For 1 second, Roman looked like the man half of Chicago feared. Then he nodded. "Yes, sir." Ruth smiled into her coffee. Nora heard his voice from inside the exam room and turned her head toward the door. Dr. Reese glanced at her. "You want him in?" Nora breathed through a contraction, fingers twisted in the sheet. "No." A beat. By the door. Dr. Reese opened it. Roman stood in the hallway, hands washed, hair damp from melted snow, eyes fixed on Nora with a terror so honest it stripped him of every old title. "You can stand there," Nora said. He nodded. "I can stand here. If I tell you to leave, you leave. Yes. If you say anything about me being strong, I will throw something." Roman swallowed. "All right." The birth took hours. Time broke into pieces. Pain. Breath. Dr. Reese's voice. Roman's hand appearing when Nora reached without meaning to. Nora gripping it so hard his knuckles went white. Snow hitting the windows. Ruth praying under her breath in the hallway. Annie crying before there was anything to cry about. At one point Nora turned her face toward Roman and whispered, "I can't." Roman leaned close but did not crowd her. "Yes, you can." Her eyes flashed. "I said no strong speeches." "I know." "Then what are you doing?" "Telling the truth." She would have laughed if the next contraction had not taken her under. When their daughter finally came into the world, she arrived angry. A furious, red-faced cry filled the room. Nora sobbed once, a sound torn from someplace deeper than pain. Dr. Reese lifted the baby. "There she is." Roman stopped breathing. The child was placed against Nora's chest, warm and slippery and impossibly real. Nora curved both arms around her, shaking, laughing, crying. "Hi," she whispered. "Hi, my love." Roman stood beside the bed as if movement might shatter the moment. Nora looked up at him. His face was wet. She had seen Roman Blackwell bleeding and silent. She had seen him furious. She had seen him feared. She had never seen him look so undone. "Do you want to hold her?" Nora asked. His mouth opened, but no sound came. Dr. Reese raised an eyebrow. "Answer before she changes her mind." "Yes," Roman said quickly. "Yes." When the baby was settled in his arms, Roman held her like a man trusted with fire. "She is so small," he whispered. Nora smiled faintly. "She disagrees." Roman looked down at his daughter. "Hello, Elise." They had chosen the name separately and together. Nora had written it once in the margin of a notebook. Roman had seen it during a video call with Claire and never mentioned it. Later, when he sent legal support papers, the memo line had read for Elise. Nora had cried over that against her better judgment. Roman touched one finger to the baby's cheek. "I'm your dad," he said. His voice broke. "I am late, but I am here." Nora turned her face into the pillow. He saw. He said nothing. Evelyn accepted a plea deal 3 weeks after Elise was born. Not because she was sorry. Because evidence had corners now, and every corner pointed toward her. The agreement included 15 years in federal prison, forfeiture of major assets, cooperation in financial crime investigations, no contact with Nora, no contact with Elise, and no legal claim through proxies, trusts, or family representatives. Roman read the document in Claire's office while Elise slept in a carrier at Nora's feet. He signed where needed. Nora watched his hand move across the page. "Does it hurt?" she asked. Roman looked up. "Yes." She nodded. He looked back at the signature. "But not as much as keeping her in our lives." That was one of the first answers she believed without wanting to check it for hidden wires. The empire did not collapse cleanly. Nothing that old ever did. Companies had to be examined, accounts frozen, men questioned, property sold, alliances broken. Some captains turned against Roman. Others disappeared before federal agents could reach them. Reporters called him a traitor, a reformer, a coward, a grieving son, a criminal trying to buy redemption with his mother's blood. Roman stopped reading the articles after Nora asked why he was letting strangers write his face for him. He sold the penthouse. He sold the Lake Forest estate after removing every family portrait from the walls. Thomas Blackwell's portrait he kept in storage, not out of love, but because some grief had to be dealt with slowly. Evelyn's portrait he had burned on the back lawn before the sale closed. Nora did not ask if that helped. Roman moved to Bayfield in early spring, not into Nora's cabin. That mattered. He rented a small blue house near the marina, close enough to walk over when invited, far enough that Nora could close her door without feeling watched. The first week, people stared. By the second, Ruth had decided he looked underfed and began handing him biscuits wrapped in napkins. By the third, Cal had him fixing a dockboard in weather Roman clearly did not respect. "You ever used a hammer?" Cal asked. Roman looked at the tool in his hand. Yes. For what Roman hesitated. Not this. Cal grunted. Figured. Roman learned. Badly at first. He learned diapers could defeat men with criminal networks. He learned Elise liked being bounced near windows, but hated the yellow blanket Nora loved. He learned Dr. Reese did not care who he had been in Chicago and would physically remove him from the clinic if he used his phone during appointments. He learned Ruth's coffee was terrible and everyone drank it anyway because loyalty sometimes tasted burnt. Most of all, he learned that Nora's anger had weather. Some days it was distant thunder. Some days it broke open without warning. A phrase, a smell, a car idling too long near the road. And she was back in the restaurant, back in the conference room, back in a world where people discussed her child like property. The first time she snapped at him over nothing, he almost defended himself. He had arrived 10 minutes late with formula because the store had been out and he had driven to the next town. Nora stood in the cabin doorway, exhausted Elise crying against her shoulder. "You said 5, she said. "I know. They were out. You could have called. I did. It went to voicemail." "Then call again." Roman's face tightened. "I was trying to get what she needed." Nora's eyes filled. "I needed to know you were coming back when you said you would." The old Roman rose in him, wounded and proud. "I came, didn't I?" He heard the sentence inside himself. He did not say it. Instead, he set the bag down, stepped back, and lowered his voice. "You're right." Nora looked at him like she did not trust the words. He continued, "I should have found a way to reach you." "I am sorry." Elise cried harder. Nora looked away. "I hate that I need this much." Roman's throat tightened. "You needed it before. I just trained you to stop asking." She stared at him. Then she began to cry silently, angrily, while Elise wailed between them. Roman did not touch her until she nodded. That was how they rebuilt, not with one speech, not with one federal case, not with one baby softening the edges of old wounds. They rebuilt in small, unglamorous acts. Roman showing up on time, Nora saying when she was afraid. Roman taking Elise at 3 a.m. without making exhaustion sound heroic. Nora letting him sit beside her at the clinic. Roman signing every document Claire put in front of him. Nora refusing his money for herself and accepting support for Elise because pride was not the same as freedom. Summer came slowly to Bayfield. The lake changed from iron gray to blue. Tourists arrived with cameras and sunburns. Annie painted flowers on the side of Ruth's diner. Cal pretended not to like Elise and carved her a wooden rabbit that she immediately chewed. One morning, Nora walked down to the marina and found Roman sitting on the dock with Elise asleep against his chest. The baby wore a yellow sun hat too large for her head. Roman wore jeans and a faded shirt Ruth had bullied him into buying from the town thrift store after declaring his city clothes depressing. Nora stopped a few feet away. Roman looked up. "Morning, morning." She sat beside him close enough that their shoulders almost touched. For a while they watched sunlight scatter across the water. Roman said, "I used to think peace was what men bought after winning." Nora looked at him. "And now?" He glanced down at Elise. "Now I think peace is what is left when you stop needing to win." The breeze moved Nora's hair across her cheek. She did not answer quickly. Roman had learned not to fill her silences. Finally, she reached into the pocket of her sweater and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. Roman went still. The letter. Not the one he carried in his wallet. This one was different, creased more deeply. Ink smudged near the bottom. "I wrote this first," Nora said. He looked at it but did not take it. "What does it say?" "Most of the same things. Less controlled." A faint smile touched her mouth. "I called you arrogant in 3 different ways. I deserved at least 5. She laughed softly. The sound moved through him like forgiveness, though he knew better than to grab at it. Nora looked out at the lake. "I kept it because I needed to remember that the woman who left was not cruel. She was trying to live." Roman's voice was quiet. "She saved all of us." Nora turned toward him. "No, she saved herself first." He nodded. "Yes." That answer mattered. She offered him the paper. Roman took it carefully. "Why now?" he asked. Nora watched Elise sleep against him, one tiny fist curled in his shirt. "Because I do not want our life built on the night I left. I want it built on what we chose after." Roman swallowed. "What are you choosing?" Nora looked at him for a long time. "You." Slowly, carefully, with my eyes open. His face changed before he could stop it. She lifted one hand. "And I am choosing myself too. If those 2 choices ever become enemies again, I choose myself." Roman closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, they were wet. "Good." Nora smiled. "Good, I failed the woman who chose me over herself. I would like to love the woman who never does that again." The lake moved beneath the dock. Elise stirred, made a small sound, then settled. Nora leaned her head against Roman's shoulder. It was not the end of pain. It was not the return of who they had been. It was something quieter and sturdier. A beginning that did not ask either of them to forget the cost. 2 years after the night at the Verity Room, Nora married Roman again on a patch of grass overlooking Lake Superior. There were no chandeliers, no politicians, no crime bosses smiling with dead eyes, no mother in silver silk measuring every breath. There were white chairs borrowed from the church, wildflowers in mason jars, Ruth's terrible coffee and excellent pie, Annie painting the ceremony from beneath a maple tree, Dr. Reese holding Elise until the little girl demanded to be put down and toddled toward Nora halfway through the vows. Mara stood beside Nora and cried openly. Cal walked Nora down the aisle because her father was too ill to travel, but had sent a letter blessing the day and warning Roman that sick men could still haunt people who hurt their daughters. Roman waited at the end of the aisle in a simple dark suit. No guards, no crown, no kingdom. When Nora reached him, he whispered, "You sure?" She looked at Elise, who was now trying to eat a flower petal out of Annie's bouquet. Then she looked at Roman. "No." He blinked. Nora smiled. "But I am not scared of choosing anymore." Roman laughed softly and his eyes filled. Their vows were not perfect. Nora's voice shook once. Roman had to stop twice because emotion caught in his throat. Elise clapped at the wrong time and everyone laughed. When Roman placed the ring on Nora's finger, it was the same plain gold band she had left on his desk. He had kept it, not because he expected its return, because he had needed to remember that love could walk away when it was not honored. Nora touched the ring after he slid it into place. Then she took his hand. The wind moved over the lake. Somewhere behind them, Ruth sniffled loudly and blamed pollen, though it was September. Cal muttered that city men cried too much. Mara told him to shut up and handed him a handkerchief. Roman leaned close. "I love you," he said. Nora looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the man he had been, the man he had lost, and the man still becoming. "I know," she said. "Now keep showing me." He smiled. "I will." The ceremony ended with no grand promise from the sky, no clean erasure of what had come before. Only sunlight on water, a child laughing in the grass, a woman who had once vanished standing fully seen, and a man who had burned his throne learning day by day how to come home without needing a kingdom to follow him there.